Welcome back to Readers the Right. Today is a really fun episode that I've been promising for a while, and that is how to build a lore-accurate Dark Angels army based on the Lion, Son of the Forest. It's a very unique build, and Games Workshop's been giving little pieces here and there lately that actually make this possible now, and it's something I'm super excited about. It's an army that I've wanted to build for a while. I'm been a big fan of the Dark Angels for quite a while, but I wasn't really sure what direction I wanted to take it, because up until this point, you'd have to choose between one of the wings, and I didn't really want to specialize my Dark Angels that way, especially if we went with the Raven Wing. It'd be too similar to my White Scars. So with all of that, I decided to really look into what it would look like, especially since I have a lion, to actually build this Army of the Risen and all of its details. So if you want a full summary of Lion, Son of the Forest, I will link it there. Make sure you check that out. It was a lot of fun to read, and it's one of the best Games Workshop books I've read in quite a while. Honestly, the last two book reviews I've done are probably my top two Games Workshop books this year. I did read a Gaunt's Ghost book as well. And all of those have culminated into why I really love this entire universe. There's a lot that all of the authors involved in the Black Library do to bring these stories to life. And it's a lot of fun to bring them to life on the tabletop too. It gives you an opportunity to play those characters that you've loved in the books. And when you do that, you can really take your tabletop gaming to the next level. While some of these lists won't be the most competitive, I don't know if I'll actually see them in a tournament, they're going to be a lot of fun to play for those of you who enjoy the lore, or as some people like to say, the fluff. But with that, there's a lot of different key things that need to happen for this army to be really lore focused based on this book that you won't see as much in a Dark Angels army. For example, most Dark Angels armies tend to be at least one of the wings, whether that be Deathwing or Raven Wing. Some will go more generic Dark Angels, but the Dark Angels themselves have a lot of traits that are very unique to them. They have a lot of accents and color schemes that are very true to them. And the 30K Dark Angels are very different from the 40K Dark Angels. And that's where a lot of this gets kind of complicated. So what are some of the key characters that we actually need to make sure we have in this army so that it feels lore accurate? Well, the first one's pretty obvious. We need Lionel Johnson. I've got my list pulled up here right next to me, and down in the description, there will be a link to the actual list that I've built out. It's built out through New Recruit, so you'll be able to see that there. With Lionel Johnson, he's a very big lone operative in the game, but he is our warlord, obviously. And there's a few other characters that we really need to kind of represent. The first being a captain. We have a captain in the story. He's fantastic. He's not really technically a captain, but he's basically made the captain of the Risen. And he plays a huge role in the story. So I feel like if we're going to build a lore-accurate army, we have to have a model to represent him. And any captain model will do. I prefer the captain that you can put a shield on. And that will make it a little bit more correct to how he plays. That character in particular uses bolt pistols most of the time. So do what you want to build him out, but you have that captain. Now, the next big thing you need are the Inner Circle companions. Those guys directly represent most of the Risen. They play pretty similar to a Blade Guard, but they have some unique abilities as well that have just become available and have made them far more interesting in tabletop. And I'm not going to do a deep dive on every single model here, but you need quite a few of those. In my opinion, you need 4 squads. Or, sorry, 2 squads, but instead of the 3, you use the 6. And by doing that, you can pair them with your captains, or for points reasons, I went with a Justiciar instead of a chaplain. Plus, Dark Angels chaplains and the Risen, not really good to put together. They're not one that you're going to see. Even really in the book, you don't see that at all. But a Justiciar paired with Inner Circle Companions leads to a very cool combination of stuff that makes them very lore correct in the way they play. Now, after that, I do bring a couple others in with the list. I did end up using a chaplain just so I could have a leader to lead some jump pack units. The Dark Angels are pretty famous for their jump pack units, just like a lot of other Space Marine legions. But the entire reason they got their name is because of their jump pack units. Their jump pack units descended from the sky, like the Dark Angels returning. So it felt like to be a lore accurate unit, you had to have jump packs in there. On top of that, you're going to have a lot of plasma as well. Now, the Dark Angels tend to be very heavy in their fighting style. So Terminators, Heavy Intercessors, all of that type of stuff is going to be pretty common for the Dark Angels. And you see that a lot. I also added a Librarian and Terminator armor so that he can lead some of the Terminators, as well as an Apothecary Biologist. I feel like Dark Angels, you have to have an Apothecary out there. He will do a lot of good for your units. But those are the characters we have out there. And then I added an Assault Intercessor squad and 2 Heavy Intercessor squads. You can pair that into one larger unit. So you get a full unit of 10 of those. It just depends on how you want to handle it. Assault Intercessors with jump packs. I put a Scout squad out there. I do like a Scout squad, especially when you're running something as heavy as this in the Dark Angels units. It gives you some quicker units that can move around and accomplish missions for you while your Dark Angels deal with the bigger mess. And then I added, like I said, the Inner Circle Companions, but I also added some Deathwing Terminators. You can use any of those Terminators. You have the Deathwing Knights, you have Assault Terminators, whatever you want to use there, even just standard Terminators. I like the Deathwing Terminators because they do feel a lot more like the older Dark Angels. They have a lot more to their armor that feels that way. So that's why I went there, but any of the Terminator squads will work. And then finally, just for some transport and some tanks, I went with a Gladiator Lancer and 2 Impulsors, just to get the troops where they need to go, because a lot of those guys are heavy and slow, and you need to move them around the battlefield fairly quickly. So that is the list. And I went through and did a breakdown on the price to see what that would cost to do just to build outright, just like I have on the last couple of videos. And if you buy them Games Workshop retail, that's going to cost you $1,332. So not the cheapest army. Actually, it might actually be the most expensive army we've done yet. I don't remember. I think the White Scars were just a little under that. But you do see a lot of really good discounts through the discount retailers. Once again, I used Wargame Portal and Amazon for that. Neither of them sponsor me, but they are my favorite go-tos for finding cheap, new Warhammer stuff, at least in the United States. There are a lot of really good other retailers that I've heard a lot of good things about, but those are my 2 that I seem to find the best prices for where I live, besides my local game store. And by doing that, it drops the price to $1,155.57. So not a small drop in price by going that direction. Now, if I wanted to make my army as Dark Angels as possible, especially given that most of these units will be units that have survived the Battle of Caliban and were transported into the future, I'm assuming they're going to look more 30K than 40K. So by using a lot of the 30K resin models, I can make this as fluffy as possible and give this army a really cool feel that you wouldn't get with just normal 40K models in general. Your Inner Circle Companions and your Deathwing Knights will do that. They do a good job. But a lot of the other units are just your generic units that don't really feel fully Dark Angels. So if you go and actually dive into it, you can find certain things like the new captain, pulling from a Dark Angels captain, as well as an old proxy for the Judiciary as well. And there's a really cool Dark Angels chaplain that would play really well here. And then I also pulled a different Librarian and Terminator armor. They have a Dark Angel specific one of those as well that looks fantastic. And then I went through, and they have actual tactical squads for the Dark Angels that would replace your heavy intercessor squads. They also have a kind of fancier Terminator squad that will go into that as well. So if you go with those resin upgrades or plastic upgrades in some cases, that bumps your cost to $1,452. So not the cheapest army to build. I've seen worse, and I'm sure we'll see worse as things go on. But of the three we've done so far, it's probably the most expensive. I think the White Scars, when we went to the actual fluffy army, because we were adding a bunch of jet bikes and stuff like that, it got more expensive. But there's a lot of really cool stuff that we can do with this army. And I do hope to eventually be able to build it. I've got some of the pieces. Like I've got the Scout Squad already. I've got a captain. I've got Lionel Johnson and a bunch of others that I can already begin to build this army with. But the units aren't the only part of this that is going to be key to making this build work. Because all of these Risen are being pulled from 30K to 40K, their armor is not going to look like modern Dark Angels. It's not going to be that dark green color, or the bone color of the Deathwing, or the black of the Ravenwing. You're going to see, well, I guess I shouldn't say not the black of the Ravenwing. It's going to be a different black. It's going to be black with the red logo instead of the white. And on top of that, if that individual Space Marine is a true son of Caliban, his pauldron is going to be dark green. And on the other shoulder, it won't be the actual unit or the unit type designations that you see in 40K, whether it be frontline or fire support or whatever. They would actually have the different crests of their orders if they were part of the Knightly Order of Caliban. So you're going to have to take that into account as well. Luckily, most of those Knightly Orders use pretty simple logos, whether it be a simple sun or a chalice or something along those lines. So you'll be able to mock those up with some transfers. You could also pull some of like the raptor heads or the raptor bird heads that go in there. You can do whatever you need to make it work and get that more accurate feel. Sometimes they may also just be quartered in two colors, but each of those units is going to have those different pauldrons to properly reflect their older Dark Angels nature. And some of them may not have done that. Some of them may have reverted to the dark green armor to try and fit in a little bit more with their future brothers. However you want to explain it, go for it. But a lot of those main units, like I said, are going to be black power armor with those pauldrons, because they are the 30K Dark Angels, not the 40K Dark Angels. The dark green armor came a lot later, long after Lionel Johnson had gone. Although the armor he is wearing as the Son of the Forest is actually that dark green in a lot of the artwork. I don't know when that changed. They don't really explain that, besides just having Lionel Johnson actually notice it and wonder why he's wearing green armor instead of black. And it is actually, I think, black for a large part of the book too. But how you paint those units will differentiate themselves from the modern Dark Angels. And that's going to be one of the keys to making it a little bit more lore accurate. You're going to want to definitely make them feel like they were 30K ripped into 40K as much as possible. So, why would we want to really do this with the Dark Angels and not just play a normal Dark Angels army and maybe add the Lion in there? Well, at least for me, I like to tell a story when I'm playing. I like to have as much lore accuracy as possible in my army so that I feel like I'm immersed in the books that I love. And that's one of the big reasons we're tackling this today. And if you enjoyed it, don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you have an army you want me to try, let me know in the comments below. This video came a lot sooner because it was the one you guys requested the most. So I would love to tackle some more of them, and hopefully we'll be doing some more here in the near future. I've got some fun stuff planned for the next few weeks, and then after that we may be coming back to more lore accurate armies if it's something you guys enjoy. And until then, we'll see you guys next time.